Greetings. In today's video, we'll delve into the intricacies of the Tower of Karma game from Usogui. If you enjoy the content and would like to see more discussions about Usogui, kindly consider subscribing to the channel. To understand the Tower of Karma, we first need to delve into the backdrop against which it takes place. After taking control of the TV program in the KY Declaration arc and gaining possession of the coveted L file from the Minotaur game, Madarame Baku initiates a pirate broadcast. He presents a roulette with various letters, each corresponding to a different organization. However, he lacks concrete evidence for the incidents linked to these letters, rendering public exposure impossible. Given the exposure of crimes in the previous program, the public naturally expects similar revelations this time around. Meanwhile, the L file's holders anxiously anticipate their potential exposure, with the only escape being to accept Karamete's men. Incorporating Karamete into these organizations is essential for the Surpassing the Leader game, as it allows Kakaru members to infiltrate and extract crucial information. The game takes place at the Emperor Tower, a decommissioned radio tower. After the new radio tower is shut down by other Kakaru members to prevent contradictions, Baku utilizes the prepared Emperor Tower to broadcast his threat to the L file users. It's crucial for Baku to host a Kakaru match there, as Kakaru is tasked with safeguarding the venue. Moreover, the game must endure until the completion of the Karamete strategy. Initially, Baku's adversary was the Secretary General of the Good Governance Party, a victim of the L file. However, when Baku agrees to bet 50 billion, the true opponent reveals himself, Suteguma, who brutally eliminates the original contender. It's noteworthy that Suteguma is a Kakaru member and belongs to Ideal, a rival organization. Baku wagers his 50 billion and the successful execution of the Karamete strategy, while Suteguma is not required to bet anything. This unbalanced setup arises from Baku's desperation for a Kakaru match to ensure the success of his Karamete strategy. Before we delve into the mechanics of the game, it's critical to mention that our analysis will primarily focus on the clash between Usogui and Suteguma. We'll lightly touch upon other scenarios, such as Marco's battle against Caracal, and the confrontations between the leader and the government, only when they directly impact key elements of the game. We're here to unravel the intricacies of the game, not the entire arc, which has many layers to dissect. Now let's get into the heart of the matter, the game's rules. The match consists of two teams, with Baku and Marco on one side, and Suteguma and Hugo on the other. All communication devices and weaponry are seized. The 50 billion is transferred to an anonymous bank account, and a retinal scan of each participant is performed. Baku and Suteguma are required to place their hands in a box, each side containing 1 to 10 beads. Each player grasps an amount of their choosing. The box is linked to a sensor which measures the weight of the remaining beads, and the total of the beads in the participant's hands becomes the final digits of the password. To claim victory, a player must ascend to the tower's top and input the total number of beads. For a password entry attempt, a player's retina must be scanned. However, it's crucial to note that after 3 unsuccessful attempts, the game ends without a winner, and the prize money defaults to Kakaru. Suteguma queries how they could discover the opponent's beads, to which it is explained that any means possible, including physical force in the floors above. In the floors they currently occupy, there's a feature known as the Bloody Chaplain. This is a room where players can guess the total sum of the beads. If their guess is correct, the losing player receives an injection of 600 milliliters of the winner's blood. The room is synchronized with the bead box to determine the correct sum. Notably, a player cannot guess an unfeasible number. For example, if they're holding 10 beads, they can't suggest a total of 3. Failure to comply results in immediate disqualification and a forced blood transfusion from the opponent. If the player doesn't respond within 10 minutes, they receive a penalty of 100 milliliters of the opponent's blood. Bear in mind, the Bloody Chaplain is just an ancillary mechanism. A correct guess doesn't equate to winning the game. The victorious player still needs to reach the tower's pinnacle and input the correct password. The password can be entered at any time, the only requirement being a successful retina scan. However, each player gets only one shot at password entry post-retina scan, and as previously mentioned, after 3 failed attempts, the password is invalidated. While readers only discover the correct number of beads at the conclusion of the game, for the purpose of this explanation, we can disclose that both players selected 9 beads, making the sum and the correct password 18. Let's delve into the detailed play of the game. Baku and Suteguma entered the Bloody Chaplain, engaging in a game of rock, paper, scissors to determine who guesses the sum of the beads first. Baku emerges victorious. It's important to note that a player guessing incorrectly provides valuable information to their opponent. This is due to the rule stating that a player cannot propose an impossible number. For example, a guess of 5 informs the opponent that the player isn't holding more than 5 beads. If the opponent is holding 3 beads, they also know the player isn't holding 2, as the sum of 3 and 2 beads would match their guess. In the first round, Baku opts for 11, the number that reveals the least about his choice. Suteguma can now deduce that Baku isn't holding 2 beads, since Suteguma's 9 plus 2 would equal 11. Suteguma then inputs the number 10, the second most non-revealing number. Baku learns that Suteguma's bead count can't be 10 or 1 because Baku's 9 plus 1 equals 10. However, with that incorrect guess, Suteguma gains new information. Baku can't be holding 1 bead. Concluding the first round, Suteguma declares he's deciphered the password, instructing Hyugo to input it at the tower's top. Baku tries, but fails to discern the password. He'd previously advised Marco that if anyone tried to enter a password, he needed to identify what number was input. Later chapters reveal that Suteguma bluffed. He directed Hyugo to input 8 while holding 9 beads, a deliberate error, making Baku believe Suteguma is not holding more than 8 beads. Suteguma instructs Hyugo to ascend first, expecting Marco to tail him. Then he starts climbing the stairs as Hyugo had disabled the elevators. Unexpectedly, Baku follows him. Suteguma, stronger physically, could take Baku down within the rules. Baku reveals that Suteguma couldn't have read him since he hadn't counted his beads until after leaving the room, choosing 11 as it was a valid guess regardless. Baku then discloses that he'd discarded his beads so Suteguma couldn't determine his bead count by searching him. Suteguma throws Baku to the ground to protect him from government snipers. This is key, as Suteguma needs Baku alive to learn the correct password, a goal he masks by pretending to try to kill Baku. In the ensuing fight, Baku and Suteguma tumble down the stairs, leading Baku to question whether he's losing. Marco, who was battling against Hyugo and Leo, notices Baku and Suteguma fighting. He informs Baku the password attempt was unsuccessful. Baku tries to sway Suteguma's partners by assuring them he'd participate in the second round of the Bloody Chaplain, as they believed Suteguma was at a disadvantage given Marco saw Hyugo's entry. Before returning to the first floor, Suteguma blinds Baku in one eye to prevent him from using the retinal scan. Baku faints and dreams of a gunshot, an essential clue to Suteguma's bluff, as Suteguma's behavior had shifted when a gunshot was heard during the fight. Upon awakening, Marco fills Baku in on all the events, including the police's position, but he fails to remember the password Hyugo entered. In the second round within the Bloody Chaplain, Baku attempts a cold read on Suteguma, deducing that he is Chinese and comes from a disadvantaged background. However, due to Suteguma's lack of reaction, Baku questions his own analysis. But, recalling the video of Suteguma playing against Fukuru, Baku spots a minute facial expression. Realizing this is a fake habit intentionally created to deceive him in future games, as the match against Fukuru was staged, Baku notes this expression again and decides to guess 12, but he is incorrect. Baku then bluffs, stating his bead count is 7 to confuse Suteguma, but suggests Suteguma should just wait for 10 minutes and accept the 100 milliliters penalty. Suteguma disregards Baku's words and enters 14, another incorrect guess. Baku continues explaining that Suteguma wasn't concerned about choosing the wrong number because he wouldn't die, and although it allowed Baku to narrow down his bead count, he had deduced the correct number and could ascend to the top to enter the password. Baku then claims that Suteguma's allies no longer exist, meaning that if Baku were to die, Suteguma wouldn't be able to reach the top and enter the password. But if they were to play a third round, Baku would open the path to the top. This is all a ruse by Baku. Suteguma agrees, but only if they both go to the top to verify if his allies are truly gone, which Baku declines as Suteguma could kill him en route. Upon exiting the Bloody Chaplain, they encounter Kakaru members guarding the Chaplain since the police are close to infiltrating the building. Outside, Suteguma's allies fail to show up, and Baku persuades Suteguma to accept a third match when a doll drops from the elevator doors. The doll signifies that Baku instructed Marco to deliver all his beads and a letter to Hugo and Leo, and then drop the dolls. They suspect a trap, but Kurama decides to investigate and reads the letter. Hugo confirms that he knows Suteguma's bead count, which is 5, and had this knowledge before the second round. She was about to enter 14 as the password using Marco's retina, but hesitates at the last moment, choosing to follow Baku's plan. Her intention was to change the password after Marco enters it correctly, and if he were to enter it incorrectly, wait for Suteguma, ensuring victory in either scenario. To further Baku's plan, she instructs Hugo to inform Marco of the erroneously inputted password he'd forgotten, number 8. Kurama's hesitation stemmed from her disbelief in Suteguma's bead count of 5, given that Baku's letter detailed what had transpired on the stairs and revealed the match between Fukuru and Suteguma as a fixed game. Now, with 12 and 14 entered as sums, Suteguma knows that Baku's bead count can't be 1, 2, 3, or 5, and Baku knows that Suteguma's bead count can't be 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10. Finally, Suteguma agrees to the third round because he isn't completely sure of the correct number. As the Bloody Chaplain is about to close, Marco arrives and reveals the forgotten password to be 8. Baku then instructs Marco to input 13 into the terminal. This is a bluff on Baku's part, designed to trick Suteguma into thinking Baku hasn't seen through Suteguma's strategy of inputting an impossible number into the terminal. Marco knew he needed to pretend to input the number 13. Baku then enters 13 in the Chaplain, which is incorrect. This section of the game is indeed the most complex and crucial for understanding the intricate mind games between Baku and Suteguma. When Baku chose the number 13, both in his directive to Marco and his personal input in the Bloody Chaplain, it gave away a significant piece of information to Suteguma. It suggested that Baku was absolutely confident that the total sum was 13. For Baku to be this sure, it meant that he had thoroughly analyzed the possible combinations of beads for himself and Suteguma. Let's delve into the specific combinations that led Baku to this conclusion. Firstly, Baku's possible bead count could be one of the following: 6, 7, 8, or 9. And if he believed Suteguma's bluff, he would think Suteguma's possible bead counts are 4, 5, 6, or 7. The sum of the bead counts for both players would determine the possible outcomes. For example, if Baku had 9 beads, and we know the sum can't be 14, as it was a wrong answer, the possible sums would be 13, 15, or 16. In this scenario, Baku could not be entirely sure that the sum was 13, because there are other possible results. On the other hand, if Baku had 8 beads, the correct sum couldn't be 12 or 14. Therefore, the possible correct sums could only be 13 or 15. Interestingly, if Baku had 7 beads, the correct sum couldn't be 11, 12, or 14. Therefore, the only possible correct sum would be 13, and Baku could be absolutely sure of this. Similarly, if Baku had 6 beads, 13 would be the only possible sum left. Given Baku's absolute confidence in the sum being 13, Suteguma made the deduction that Baku must have either 6 or 7 beads. With this deduction, Suteguma chose 15, further narrowing down Baku's possible bead count to 7. This session was so complex to analyze that I had to consult a Reddit user. Pause the video to read his explanation. After being convinced that Baku's bead count is 7, Suteguma ascends to the terminal to enter 16, as he has 9 beads. When the terminal returns the password as incorrect, viewers begin to understand Suteguma's bluff with the number 8. Baku explains how he figured out the bluff, noticing inconsistencies in Suteguma's behavior. After a series of plot twists, Kurama reveals that the number 13 has not yet been entered. After Suteguma suffers a complete defeat, he proposes joining Kurama's group so they can use Marco's retina and seize the money. However, Kurama states she will only accept his proposal if he can correctly guess Baku's bead count. Upon receiving the bag of beads, Suteguma counts 9, but suspects a trap and answers 10, assuming the password to be 19. For this, Kurama shoots him, but Suteguma ultimately ends up joining the group. His response is a testament to his habit of avoiding obvious solutions and easy choices, leading him to believe that Baku must have hidden a bead to deceive him. In the end, this game is a complete victory for Madarame Baku. The thrilling narrative shows how he ingeniously flipped Suteguma's bluff on its head. There is so much more to this arc that hasn't been touched upon, such as the conflict between Marco and Caracal, the tension with the private funeral division, the showdown between Kakaru and the government, and the ranking battle. This arc is incredibly dense, and each of these elements influence the story in some way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.